Yes, let's get back to the main stories of the weekend. Joining me now are political commentators Scott Lucas and also Jason Reed from Young Voices UK. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen. Let's start by talking about Ukraine, or actually more specifically Russia, because Scott, Russia has banned Boris Johnson from entering the country. You know, when I read that headline, I thought, that's like banning me from going to a vegan festival. I wasn't going there anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like who cares? I mean, look, it's not like Boris Johnson is planning, his vacation for Siberia this year. If Boris likes to vacation and meet Russians, he does so in Italy. But that's another story for another time.
Okay, indeed, yes. But yeah, what is Putin? What is Russia doing? What are they trying to achieve in this?
To distract people from the news cycle. Which isn't something that would ever happen here, of course, anticipating our next story. But, in the last, so Russia its military offensive has stalled. It was unable to take the capital, Kyiv. It has taken heavy losses. It's not in a position yet to advance in the east and in the south. It's facing expanding sanctions. And late Wednesday, early Thursday, its flagship, it's the biggest ship it has in the Black Sea, sank, probably because it was hit by Ukrainian missiles. The first major Russian warship to be sunk since 1941. Well, you don't want people talking about that, so what do? Oh, it's the Brits. They're terrible. They're awful, even though we weren't the ones that sank the warship. Trust me. And it's just like, here's an enemy. Get mad at the British. Get mad at Boris. Get mad at Dominic Raab. I think Nadine Dorris can't go to Russia as well for, the next version of I'm a Celebrity, Get Out of Here. So I've seen Iran has done this for years. Iran does this by sanctioning people and telling their people, boo, the West is evil. And Russia's just got its own variety of it right now.
So Jason, Scott's saying that this won't really make much of a difference. However, interesting, he's saying that this is that Scott, we're saying that not that we haven't done much.
No. All I'm saying in this case is that the UK has actually done quite a bit to supply military weapons and so on.
More sanctions, and they've gone tougher with sanctions just this week alone.
Yeah, what I'm saying is what they did not want the Russian people to do was to talk about the fact that it was Ukraine, not us. It was Ukraine that probably sank that ship, especially since they may have lost up to 460 crew, but they're not admitting they're dead yet.
So, Jason, it's very, very interesting, just picking up on what Scott mentioned. It's not just Boris Johnson, other ministers, mostly cabinet ministers, including Dominic Raab, Nadine Dorris, Rishi Sunak. So he's not going to go to Russia anytime soon. Interestingly enough, Theresa May, former Tory Prime Minister, not on cabinet at all now, but yes, she also is banned from travelling to Russia. Do you think this would make any difference at all?
It won't make any difference in the international sense, but I think this is not for our benefit. Putin is doing this for the sake of his own people. He's becoming increasingly worried about his domestic politics. It's very, very important that he keeps control of the narrative in Russia, that he keeps successfully branding the truth about the war, effectively, that Russia has been humiliated by the fact that it's been unable to take Ukraine in the way that it wanted to. It's essential for him that he keeps successfully branding that as Western propaganda so that his people continue to believe in him, continue to support him. Of course, he was not really worried about Boris Johnson coming on holiday to Russia anytime soon, or indeed Theresa May or Nicola Sturgeon or anyone else who's on the list. This is posturing. It's kind of grasping at straws. Because he can then grandstand and he can say, look at how evil the British and the West are. We've had to go so far as to banning them from our country.
So in terms of where we are, or indeed where Russia and Ukraine are in this war, we've had Russia again targeting Kyiv, despite troops essentially entirely leaving the area. They're still sending missiles there. Also, there's now the focus on Mariupol and taking that, and Donbass. So where would you say we are right now in this invasion?
Well, I think if you talk about it in terms of the specific, you've talked about the Russians are just simply firing off in anger after losing the warship. And what is significant here is they can't use their warplanes. They can't use the big bombers like they did in Syria to decimate that country. They're having to resort to these long-range missiles, which have hit some Ukrainian factories. Interestingly, one of the factories hit outside Kiev was the one that made the anti-ship missiles one of which probably sank the Moskva on Thursday. But the bigger story, as you put it, is the story of Mariupol. And that is we're now almost 8 weeks into the war, and the Russians have not been able to take this city, which, about 150, 200,000 people, more than 100,000 which are still there, but they can't even take that city. They've besieged it, they've starved it, they've hit it with everything. They may take it in the next few weeks, but they're taking over a destroyed city which just covers up the fact that they failed elsewhere. I think unless the Russians can regroup their military effectively, unless they can figure out a way to resupply them, unless they can figure out a way to deal with the increasing amount of military equipment going into Ukraine, Vladimir Putin's facing the fact that at best his troops are stalled, and at worst they're facing a defeat.
Jason, taking a look at that, what some is calling a controversial immigration policy due to be actually coming into effect in as little as 2 weeks' time, sending some immigrants deemed to be have got here illegally to Rwanda. News today that Priti Patel pushed that through despite her own team, civil servants, really pushing actually against this move.
Yeah, I believe it's only the second time in 30 years that this particular power, which is called ministerial direction, has been used to push a policy through in this way, which means Priti Patel is making a really bold decision here. She is really staking her flag in this idea, and if it goes wrong or if it fails, it's hard to see how she'll be able to separate herself from it, because she's tied her name to it personally so closely. It's no longer just a government policy or a Home Office policy. It is now a Priti Patel policy. We know that this is something she's been trying to do for a long time. There were negotiations with other countries going on, I think Albania at one point, but all those deals kept falling through. Rwanda is the first one where they've managed successfully to get the deal to its conclusion. And so it seems like this policy will actually go ahead. I think it's unclear what exactly the government is trying to achieve by doing this, because if it's just to disincentivize
trying to bring immigration
people
down, isn't it, Jason?
Well, yes, but how are they going to do that? Because if it's just disincentivizing people from coming to the UK, I mean, if people are already desperate enough to clamber into those incredibly unsafe boats at the hands of people smugglers on the French coast, is a trip to Rwanda for a few weeks really going to dissuade them? I'm not sure that it will, but we'll have to wait and see how the policy plays out.
Scott, as I said, we've had a number of charities, more than 100, come out calling this inhumane, just an awful move from the government. However, how else can numbers, when it comes to immigration, how else can that be brought down?
Let me ask you a question, Claudia-Liza. What's the percentage increase in asylum seekers now compared to 2002, 20 years ago?
I couldn't answer that question. However, I could let you know in terms of the number of immigrants crossing the English Channel, and it reached more than 25,000 last year compared to around 600. 8,000 the year before and 800 in 2018.
Yeah, but the reason why I tell you about this is that what the government does is it focuses on the crossings to distract from a bigger issue and the immediate issue. The bigger issue is asylum applications have not increased since 2002. They're down 40% compared to 2002. Yeah. The number of asylum seekers who are granted asylum is around 70%. So they are not just simply these people we see crossing in boats. They're without cause. What has happened is the reason why they went into the boats is because other routes to get to the United Kingdom, such as Eurotunnel, have been shut down. Now, the government doesn't say that. Jason called this bold. It's a politically callous move. Remember, Claudia-Liza, I told you that Russia's not the only government that tries to change the news cycle? So a couple days ago, I think there was a thing called Partygate, which picked back up again, right? And you don't want people talking about Partygate and talking about Boris. So they threw this story out the same way that a few months ago, remember they were going to send them to Ascension Island in the South Pacific?
Yes.
Now, here's the really serious part about this, though. It's illegal. It's an illegal move. Even if you can claim it is legal not to allow people to claim asylum to reach the country, which, in fact, they would be on shaky ground doing, it is illegal to send them to a country where they could face detention, where they could face a denial of human rights. And Rwanda is a country which has a long-standing record of detentions, denial of rights, and indeed torture. So to send these people to Rwanda, bold move, no, politically callous and inhumane just begins to capture the reality of it.
Well, I would imagine, in fact, Boris Johnson himself said he is expecting legal challenges to this, and we will indeed find out then whether this move is deemed illegal. But for now, Scott Lucas and Jason Reed, good talking to you both. After the